We're now going to hear from someone from the other side of the world, from New South Wales, and just as you would imagine, because the issue of digital inclusion is a global one, there are some big challenges there. And I don't know whether it's just because obviously Australia is just such a massive country, but the challenges are huge. It doesn't matter whether people are excluded through physical reasons, social reasons, but when it comes to geography, when you live in the middle of nowhere in Australia, you really do live in the middle of nowhere. So I'm really intrigued to see what kind of initiatives are running there successfully, which are having significant impact. So would you put your hands together for Cecily, Michael. Thank you.
Hi everyone. This time last year I was privileged to meet Helen Milner at an event in Sydney, and I saw her presentation. It was like all of 10 minutes without slides, and I just thought, this woman, I need to talk to her. So I cornered her, and she told me she was on holidays and coming back to Sydney, so I said, please let me take you out to lunch. She said, well, it has to be somewhere where a tourist would go. So I said, sure, Opera House. And I went back to the office after 3.5 hours with Helen, and we had quite a few glasses of wine, if that's okay to admit. And I said to my finance manager, this, I think, is the best investment I've ever made. And at the time, we only just found out we had our funding extended for 2 years, and we had already positioned ourselves as an organisation that was about advancing digital inclusion, but that was because we had always been known as an IT organisation. We're the only charity or not-for-profit, we call ourselves, in Australia that is funded to provide IT training and support all the way into rural New South Wales, all the way to Broken Hill, if you ever knew, it's right in the centre of Australia. And we also provided classes in our training room, and the sector just know us, all on the eastern coast. People in Western Australia, I'm not so sure about, that's too far away. But with that reputation, it was easy for me to transition us into digital inclusion, about the equal access for people who are disadvantaged, and that's always been our focus. So Helen for me is a digital hero, by the way, and I have learnt so much from her, and I am so thankful to be invited here, and I've had the opportunity to meet many of you in this room already and learn so much from you and take away so much back to Australia, and I might talk about that in a minute. So I have a little story as well about rebranding. On the left, this is who we used to be, Tri Community Exchange, that TRI. No one knew what it stood for. No one listened past Tri, and our domain was Tricom. And because we were known as an IT, people said, oh, you sound like a telco or communications, and no one wanted to, people in Australia fear technology, probably like here. So we said to the rebranding people, we want a name where people can embrace us and come towards us and not fear technology. And I am, like Helen, being proud of Good Things Foundation, I am so proud to work for Leep. Leep is the definitive step you take when you're ready to make a change in your life, and it's for the good. So we create inclusive communities so we all can imagine tomorrow together. And we have 3 business pillars. The first one, CommunityNet, is our e-newsletter, and we have about 15,000 e-newsletters going out each week that keeps everyone informed in the sector. So if you've got a training event or a resource you're putting out, you all can get that information. And the opening and click-through rate is much higher than the benchmark in the sector, and it is appalling to me that there's only 15,000 subscriptions. It's just getting the message out. The second one is our digital inclusion program, which I'll talk about in detail more, and the Volunteer Solutions is a program that I actually joined the organisation to set up, and it was funded to support all the services that work with the frail-aged people with disability, and it was to promote volunteering for them, recruit them, and then I lobbied and got some funding to train them and then support managers in how they manage them and retain them. And yes. So to me, all of those programs are all about connections, and they all complement each other because we can transfer our volunteer expertise into the digital champion space. So our challenge in Australia. this is the figure officially told by the Digital Inclusion Index. We have 3 million people out of our approximately 24 million in Australia who are not online. I don't believe that number includes people who have no digital skills. My mother and father, my father refuses to deal with computers or technology of any sort, but my mother loves her iPad and she does Facebook. She's also the sort of person who rang me one day and said, it's the Wi-Fi, it's not working. This is like a year after she already had it, and so I go up and pick it up, take it down to the Telstra store, which is our main communications, and find out that she just hadn't charged it. So that's how, my mum would be considered online because she has an iPad and she does Facebook, but they don't bank online, they don't use MyGov, which is our government interface for all things to do with your medical things, your benefits, all of that. So as the UK, the people who are not online or not included are the people who have a low socioeconomic background, the unemployed, but particularly these figures come from the Digital Inclusion Index that was just released a few months ago, and it was funded by Telstra and it was done by Swinburne University. So they looked at a sample size of 50,000. So there is, who knows if it's the whole story, but certainly over 65s are the least included, and people with disability are a very large number as well. We also, as you said so rightly, Maggie, have huge issues with broadband and access. So this year earlier, Helen and I were together up at a conference in Queensland where they were looking at broadband in the bush, and when I was sitting at the airport chatting to people afterwards, one woman said she paid £500 a month to put her children online to be able to be educated and their business. And I don't know, I pay I think £30 a month to be online in my family, and to pay $500, I don't know how they sustain that financially. So it creates a huge divide. This is the saddest thing. This is just the tip of the iceberg, this whole slide. This is about the society in Australia. So I'd like to be able to say we're really advanced in putting people online. We have a government strategy that's digital first, and they have by 2018 they want 70% of their transactions online, and they are just not understanding that people are not online, don't know how to be online, and they're not funding anything yet in that space. I hope that we can turn it around. Tinder Foundation, Good Things Foundation and Leep wrote to the Prime Minister requesting that they look at funding a program that could involve Learn My Way in Australia. But so far nothing's happened. The NDIS stands for a National Disability Insurance Scheme, and so I think it's similar to a program you have here where anyone with disability that is eligible will get their own package of funding, and then they can choose which service they want to use, which sounds, I actually totally supported this project, but or philosophy or approach, but in reality, it is just becoming an absolute nightmare for people with disability. They're not getting the same level of funding that they were currently receiving. They are 6 months behind, and the worst thing of all is that all of it has to be accessed through a portal, which is fine for those people with disability who can easily access technology, but for high needs people that have no cognitive function, who are being looked after by their carers who are quite elderly themselves, have never used a computer. Just the weekend before I left to come to Australia, a girlfriend of mine who works in this space rang me in tears because she had rung one of these type of people's carer, and to tell her that she would go to her place and help her get online. And this woman burst into tears and said, she's from Lebanon, she said, "I don't know what the government is doing. I have never used a computer in my life. I can't do this. I feel like killing myself." And that's the reality that the government is not addressing yet in Australia. As well as that, we have community organisations who are in complete disarray. And it's because our funding has gone from a state-based funding for the elderly and people with disability to a federal funding. So services don't know when they're going to have any funding post-June next year. The New South Wales government funding is also undecided about how they're going to do things in the future. So both pockets of funding are all up for review and no one has any certainty. So no one is really, like, workers are not really caring, looking at how they could be servicing their community because they're and taking on something that is, I don't know why. I mean, I guess I haven't found the answers yet in England, but I think you must have gone through this phase where people just did not want to face it because it was all just too hard. So this is what we're challenged to do in Australia, is try and get communities on board, community organisations, businesses, corporates, all actually supporting digital inclusion. They can say it's a great idea, but do they make it happen? And I'll give you an example. We had a festival, a digital festival, in a very low socioeconomic area where there is big supermarkets that do online shopping. And the manager there thought it was a really good idea to go and be represented at this festival so they could show people, how to do it. But their superiors refused to even answer phone calls to come. So they weren't allowed to be there. So this is what we do. We have a digital readiness program where we have gone out into community centres and provided iPads, like mobile devices training for people who are not online. We had some funding left over, so we're able to pay trainers to do it in the 3 local government areas where we are, and we were so inundated with people who wanted to join that we have a huge waiting list. That woman in that picture being helped came like 30, 40, 50 kilometres away, no, be accurate, at least 60 kilometres away to come and get that training because there's nothing in her area. And she's come, you'll see in a minute, from closer to the inner city to come out to where we are. We created a manual to help people, but that dates, and it's very picture, it's a picture sort of with diagrams so people can visually see how to get online and all that. But it will date very quickly, and it's not like, which is why we want to have Learn My Way. So we have a drop-in centre ourselves, and we also, we're volunteer driven and we're about supporting people get online. We're trying to demonstrate how to do it, and we're offering, to bring this to all the other centres who want it if they don't want to recruit volunteers and train them themselves. But so far we haven't got anyone signing up. So on the left here is one of the first volunteers I recruited. His name is Chris, and he's got a disability. There's only one, he's one of 10 in Australia. It's a very rare disability. When I met him, it was at an expo, and I thought he might be a person with a disability who wasn't online. But he said, no, I'm an extremely competent, I'm a gamer, and I game all the time. I said, well, so will you volunteer? He said, sure. And he is so keen to have some meaning in his life, but he's a typical person with disability in Australia who suffer from the soft bigotry of low expectations. So he's 30, in his late 30s. He's never, all he thought was, I can volunteer maybe, and he was in a role where he was like admin, but the person left that was supervising him, so they didn't want him anymore, and now he's just been gaming. So he actually emailed our office within seconds of going home to say, I met Cecily, I want to volunteer, when can I start? And because his hands make it harder for him to reach out to the keyboard and demonstrate, he actually is very good at verbalising how do you do things, because he's been training his mum for years. The man on the right is one of our people who turn up. He's never used a computer in his life. His wife died and he's very lonely, so he's come into our classes and finding a whole new world. This is, and Alistair, you can now open the network if you could please. This is our project with Tinder Foundation, which we're so proud about it. Now you can't see actually any, it's like your online, how do you say it now? Online Centres Network, but because of the launching today, you can't actually see the partners up there, but you can, I wanted you to see the map. So this is a platform that we've got funded. It's not with Learn My Way, which we're really hoping will come with it as well, but it's about getting a framework and a structure to bring any training or mentoring or access points, all consolidated in one place where everyone can find it. We're particularly focusing on people with disability for this year with the funding, and it's only in Western Sydney. Now, on that map you can see Sydney, and then Parramatta. Parramatta is, can you actually see that? Yeah, I'm looking up there, of course you can see it. So Parramatta is like the gateway to the west, so it's all Western Sydney. So Western Sydney goes all the way down to Campbelltown and out to Richmond and up to where you see Springwood and a bit past that. That's the Blue Mountains where I live. So we're Penrith, our office is located in Penrith, and that whole area is like the 4th largest economy in Australia. It's the largest multicultural community maybe in the world, and it has serious disadvantage, and it's, you know, it's got lots of potential for us to do a lot of amazing things in. So watch this space. Hopefully next year I'll come back and tell you more about how it's progressed. But that's where our partnership with Tinder has started, and it's an exciting, you know, when Nick said, imagine where you're going to be next year, well, I can't wait to imagine where we're going to be next year. And I probably have to keep hurrying. So going back to, so what we want in the future, we want Learn My Way. In New South Wales at least, but preferably in all of Australia, so everyone can have access. And for us, I really believe we have to become evolution evangelists to inspire people, to support people and hold their hands or whatever it takes to show them that being digital is not difficult. It's everyone can do it. And you know, I can give you many examples of my digi failures, but I won't now. If I could just get you to open the annual report, if you would like to know more about us, that web address there, www.annualreport.leep.ngo, or just go to our leep.ngo and go to About Us, you'll be able to read more about what we do. And there was something I was going to say and I've just forgotten. Can't remember. So. That happens sometimes. Anyway, look, thank you very much. I hope you come and talk to me during the break or link with me on Twitter or, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure and thank you.
Thank you.